Alicia, that was a hell of a job you did. And now, I've got some good news. We'll be landing at HQ soon.
Yeah! Thank you.
I've got some bad news too. An engine took a hit.
We'll make an emergency landing. Brace for impact! Alicia, just one thing. No more shooting at 10,000 feet.
In my previous video, I said that I wanted to replay Bayonetta in preparation for the upcoming third entry in the series, but that wasn't entirely true. I also wanted to play it as a point of comparison for another Japanese action game featuring a magical girl. Bullet Witch is a 2007 third-person shooter developed by Kavya and Marvelous. You play as Alicia, a witch carrying a big gun and an even bigger burden, because she's been tasked with stopping the demons that have invaded the human world. Working with the last vestiges of the human resistance, Alicia makes for the source of the demon infestation, a large pit set deep in the forest somewhere. Unlike Bayonetta, this game is pretty light on the details of its world building and lore. Bullet Witch is one of those games that I've always been interested in trying, but never got back when it was an Xbox 360 exclusive, and its reception never really made it sound like it was worth getting a hard copy. Somehow, Bullet Witch ended up getting a remastered PC port on Steam back in 2018. I can see why Bullet Witch might not have sold well when it first dropped on the 360. For one thing, this game is very short. The entire campaign spans 6 stages, and I can only recall 2 boss encounters for the entire run. Now, if Bullet Witch was being sold for $50 to $60, I'd feel ripped off. But the Steam version goes for about $15, and I feel like that's a better price for the amount of content in the game. Bullet Witch suffers from a bad first impression. The gameplay won't impress you, the game models look dated even for 2007, and the VA for Alicia sounds like she's fighting to stay awake for the entire recording session.
Witches don't need prayers.
So how does Bullet Witch play? Alicia's got 2 meters, health and mana. Killing enemies rewards you with mana drops that increase your meter. Mana gets used to cast spells and to replenish ammo. It was weird at first, but I actually like it as I don't have to go hunting down for ammo caches and can focus entirely on the shooting. Alicia moves like a standard third-person shooter from the pre-Gears of War era. You can click in the right stick for precision shots, but combat is all about run and gunning. Well, almost. Even though Alicia can take a couple of bullets to the face, it's really easy to get murked if you go too deep into enemy territory and let the entire squad focus fire your health down to 0. This is where magic comes in handy. Pressing either left or right bumper will call up the magic wheel. You can toggle between 3 tabs full of spells that you can cast, provided you have enough mana. Alicia starts out with Ancient Wall, which spawns cover for Alicia to stand behind during combat. There's no dedicated cover button in Bullet Witch. Instead, you click in left stick to crouch and duck behind cover. If you think that sounds extremely janky, then you're right. That's the entire game. Alicia has a lot of ground to cover if she wants to complete her mission, but she can only go so far in heals. So how do you sprint in Bullet Witch? Well, obviously, you open up the magic wheel and click on left stick. Instead of crouching, Alicia will zip like 40 yards down, and in some environments, you can get her airborne on the right edges. You need to know how to do this in the game, because the level design suffers from Devil May Cry 2 syndrome. The environments are way too big for what you need to do in the game. At the end of each stage, the game grades your performance and rewards you with experience points that you can use to upgrade Alicia's stats, purchase new gun configurations, as well as new spells. You want to upgrade that machine gun, as it's your workhorse for most of the game, but the other guns have some utility. The shotgun is okay, but its limited range and firing rate don't really justify its purchase. The sniper rifle is much more useful as it lets you get shots on snipers without having to go right in their faces. If you can, save some points up for the Gatling gun. Deploying it cuts down Alicia's walking speed severely, but she basically becomes a 3D printer of bullets. I don't mind the speed penalty as it actually provides challenge to the game, where most of the loop is spent holding down the fire button and strafing left and right. As for spells, Alicia can revive injured NPCs with Sacrifice. She spends some of her health to spray her blood into the NPC to revive them. Some NPCs will show their gratitude by giving Alicia food to replenish her health. It's a cute gesture, but largely pointless, as Alicia has regenerating health, and most of the early game threats won't do much against her so long as you don't get surrounded by enemy fire. The crow spell is really handy when dealing with groups of enemies. A swarm of crows distracts them while you empty your machine gun into the crowd. Ruby Spear is handy for attacking enemies behind cover, but its range is limited. The more powerful spells call down elemental attacks and consume a lot of mana. Save these for the bigger threats, like the armor that the enemies use from time to time, or the big boys that show up near the middle of the campaign. For a game that only has 6 stages, Bullet Witch really stretches those levels out. The first half are set in a city overrun by Geists, demons that have taken over human hosts. The second half brings Alicia closer to the source of the demon infestation, with the last few areas returning to the city to close up loose ends. Although Alicia may prefer to work alone, she eventually comes into contact with the human resistance, led by Maxwell Cougar.
I'm Maxwell Cougar. We don't see many soldiers dressed like you up here. Anyway, look, I know you're the one with the demonic. It's nice to meet you. Not very friendly, are you? Well, this place is a real disaster area.
This is the most generic Space Marine design I've ever seen, and this game isn't even set in space. Max is Alicia's liaison to the Resistance, and he tries to get her to open up over the course of the game. Having soldiers escort Alicia for most of the campaign reminded me of Earth Defense Force, especially with how simple the game models tend to look in both titles. So if the game looks mid and plays mid, is there any reason to play Bullet Witch? Yeah, kinda. There's a connection between Alicia and the events that cause the pit to start pumping out demons that gets revealed bit by bit throughout the campaign. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it does make the game's plot more cohesive than how it appears initially. I like the Geist designs, even though some of them are outright grotesque. The basic Geist soldiers look like something I'd see from a Western studio, and they got personality to boot. They'll talk trash during gunfights.
Did they get you? Target spotted! You can just lie around here. I'll remember this.
When they die, their death animations have them firing their guns off one last time. I like these enemies. They don't pose much of a threat in small numbers, but the sniper variants can one-shot Alicia if given the opportunity. You can cast Ancient Wall at any time to summon a barrier to hide behind while you take down snipers. Besides these guys, the next most common enemy is the Walnut Head. Now I know what you're thinking. What kind of goofy-ass enemy gets called Walnut Head? How about this kind of enemy?
He must be the one who made that shield. How pathetic.
These guys float in the sky and are the cause of all the magic barriers in a given level. Each barrier is color-coded to the corresponding Walnut Head. They're harmless at first, but later on, they use psychokinesis to lift up all of the vehicles on the street and throw them at Alicia. Getting hit by this attack is guaranteed death. Pop out of cover, unload your gun, and when they finally pop, move to the area that they were protecting to progress. Turns out that the Geists are still capable of operating heavy ordnance, and you'll eventually come into contact with APCs and tanks. Alicia's machine gun doesn't have enough stopping power for armor, so you'll have to use one of the nuke spells in the game. Lightning uses up a ton of mana, but it's a guaranteed screen clear if you can gather enough enemies in one spot. Its only downside is how long it takes to cast, and that Alicia can't move until she either casts a spell or cancels it. But man, the spell does work. The first boss of the game turns out to be invincible for the moment, so we can't actually fight it. Alicia evacuates the city along with the Resistance, and they make their way underground towards the airport to get a flight towards the last Resistance base. The underground is the scariest level for me because this enemy shows up. Something is turning humans into these grotesque shamblers that spew fire and try to impale Alicia with their protruding ribs. Something about how they move and the noises they make get my skin crawling. Once we get the Resistance at the airport and leave on a commercial plane, the first boss fight happens.
What's going on?
Ah, shit. What the hell is that thing?
I didn't expect a flying demon at this altitude. Alicia, it will be difficult to attack from inside here.
Then I'll just have to go out and meet it.
Everyone in the plane has now died due to atmospheric decompression. This is the only set piece in the entire game, and it's pretty cool, but keep an eye on where Alicia is standing, or else she could fall off the plane and die instantly. After this fight, Alicia and the group make their way to the Resistance base, where they have to hold out as waves of Geist soldiers start dropping in uninvited. In a final push against the demons, Alicia and Max's group head for the forest nearby, where the demons are said to originate. This stage sucks because it has really low visibility due to fog, and the forest is crawling with those shambler types again. I got lost and doubled back 3 times before finding the path to progress. When Alicia arrives at the pit, she finds a man barely clinging to life, impaled by several spikes hanging over the chasm. In between stages, the game shows cutscenes of a man desperate to bring back a woman he loves from death. He turned to the dark arts and learned about the pit that could grant his wish and become a catalyst for the demon invasion. So long as he lives, the demons will keep coming. Alicia recognizes the man as her father. She was going on a plane to travel for fun when it crashed and she died. Struck with grief, her father became a catalyst to bring her back. Unfortunately, Alicia was burdened with the guilt of being the cause of all the suffering in the world in the past decade.
Why? Please tell me. Why couldn't you just let me die in peace? Why?
She does the humane thing and puts her dad out of misery. Then she goes back to the city to finish off the demon that she couldn't kill the first time. This is the second and last boss of the game, and it's gimmicky, because you need the Resistance NPCs to whittle down its shield before you can deal any damage to the boss. This fight can be a time sink depending on how quickly the NPCs can break his shield. What sucks about this boss is that it moves around the city during the fight, and I had to shoot its back at one point, but it pressed itself up against a wall and just would not move. I had to wait for it to reposition before I could finish it off. After this, the game ends and Max reveals he's one of those "where's my hug" kind of guys. So, is Bullet Witch worth a buy? This one's a toughie. If you're looking for a third-person shooter by a Japanese dev that has you moving around large battlefields while occasionally providing aid to NPCs, then I can think of a better game to recommend. If you're looking for an action game featuring a witch with personality, using magic to fight her enemies that's fun and stylish, then I can think of a better game to recommend. If you're one of those types who likes to go to thrift stores and check out any old games they may have lying around, or are curious about niche game titles, then I'd say Bullet Witch is worth a playthrough. Come in with low expectations. This isn't a dig at the game or the people who worked on it. I'd rather someone approach this kind of game without any bias and come out pleasantly surprised at the things that make it interesting, rather than compare this game to a AAA title or showcase it in one of those so bad it's good kinds of videos. It's an interesting point in Kaguya's development, and I can honestly see a good concept here if someone were to take this and remake it.
So, are you satisfied?
Chase into bright moonlight, carry my sense of